folks, this is Jimmy Leach, and I'd like to welcome you to the show we call The Police Perspective. I'm going to be your host today for the next few minutes, and I want to apologize to you right off the get-go, okay? Normally when I do these shows, and you probably can't tell this, but I actually spend quite a bit of time preparing. Make myself notes, try to put things in a logical order as best I can. Well, this morning I didn't do that. Today is September 22nd, 2021, and if you have been anywhere close to a television or computer this week, you know we've had a real tragic situation. A little girl named Gabby, they found her body dead out in Utah. She had been out there with her boyfriend on the road for several weeks. You're familiar with this story. Now they say after autopsy it was a homicide. Now understand, there's a difference between a homicide and a murder. Okay, I haven't said it's a murder yet. I said it's a homicide. Homicide means that the death was caused by another human being. The death of one human being was caused by another human being. Okay, a murder, is something different, something more. You've got to have intent or malice or something of that nature. It wasn't an accident, in other words. Now, the reason I jumped on to do this, I've been listening to talking heads. I'm of course sort of a news buff, I guess. I watch a lot of news. And last night and this morning, I heard a lot of people talk about running surveillance. Okay, a lot of people who obviously have never run any surveillance, or not much. They may have seen a lot on television. I don't know. It's a different game on television, let me tell you. But there's been a lot of speculation. The boyfriend, as you probably know, the victim's boyfriend, who had been on the road with her for a long time, showed up at his home in Florida. Looks like an average neighborhood, just from looking at it on TV. I don't think it's a huge town. It may be a suburb of a huge town. I hadn't looked it up on the map. Looks like a small residential neighborhood, possibly in a medium-sized town. Okay. Now he was there. His parents said he was there. They wouldn't talk to the police, went through a lawyer and this and that. Then a few days ago, the parents said, wait, he's missing. He's come up missing. And had the police try to look for him, this and that. Now, that was before they found the little girl's body. Now, the young lady, I'm sorry. Now, people are taking pot shots at everything the police did, okay? And one of the things they said, well, they should have surveilled the house where the guy, parents said he was. Some people then came up now and said, well, maybe he wasn't even in the house. Well, a neighbor saw him out mowing the yard, okay, or saw him outside doing something. Apparently he was there at the house at some point. Now it appears he's gone. The FBI's hit the house with a search warrant. Got evidence out. I don't know what they got, but he wasn't in that house. They found him, I promise you. People saying, should have surveilled the house. Okay. There's a few things about this surveillance thing. Let me tell you, it's not quite as easy as you think it is if you've never done it. Okay, give you a couple of examples right quick. We had, I'm in western Tennessee. Where I live is about halfway between Nashville and Memphis, Jackson, Tennessee. Worked all over the state when I was with the Tennessee Bureau of Investigation and also the Tennessee Department of Safety. Worked in Memphis a whole lot, about 80 miles from Memphis. Got called down there one time to help. Now here's who was running this surveillance, okay? We're talking about surveillance. This is a dope deal. Two officers, undercover officers out of Louisville, Kentucky, the Louisville Police Department, were running a dope deal. And they got a hold of a guy in Memphis as a target. So they were coming to Memphis to do the deal. This guy just got out of jail, I believe, for second-degree murder, something like that. He wasn't a kid. He wasn't a brand new kid. Involved in this surveillance, you had the FBI, the DEA. I was with the TBI, and you had Memphis, Shelby County Metro Narcotics, some of the best officers in this country. Okay? Situation was such, we met at the hotel so that everybody, it's something you do in a surveillance. The good guys we all knew what we looked like, so we could separate the good guys from the bad guys if something bad happened, okay? We all knew what one another looked like. It became important later on in the day. The situation was, there was one of the feds were supposed to pick when the phone call came into the room that the bad guy was sitting waiting on the undercover officer. The undercover officer was supposed to leave and go to a barbecue place right down the road. One of the feds was supposed to pick him up, start following him when he left the motel, following to the barbecue place. At which point, when he had to drop off, I was supposed to pick it up. He was going to let me know, okay, they're sitting here meeting. Here's what the bad guy's driving. You got it, Leach. Then I'd follow him for a little while, so that's a pickup. See, one of the things you got to do, this would be important in the case we're talking about. When you're running surveillance, your objective is to see and hear without being seen or heard. If you get noticed, if you get burned, they're in charge of surveillance. It's either gone or they're going to carry you on wild goose chases left and right or whatever they want to do. Okay, so you got to be careful not to be seen, not to be heard. Blend in. Okay. Anyway, in this particular situation, something happened to the Fed's car and it didn't start, so they didn't get the guy picked up when he left the motel. This is the good guys, the police. He went and left, met at the barbecue place, and by the time they could call me, by the time they'd given up on their car and said, Leach, get him, we can't get there. I drove straight to the barbecue place. I wouldn't have had 3/4 of a mile maybe from the place. By the time I got there, they had already met and gone. Okay? Now we got a police undercover in a car with a bad guy that's been in prison for murder on a multi-kilo drug deal, cocaine drug deal. Before the day was over, we had helicopters up. We had them wired with a with a KEL set, a transmitter. We had helicopters up, which acts like a 2,000 high antenna. We pick up for all it. Couldn't find him. We were scared to death. His partner, I never felt much sorry for anybody in my life because we figured he was dead. And then about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, we started this thing about 8:30 in the morning. Best I recall, it was early. Somebody saw the bad guy's car sitting at a little beer joint on Summer Avenue, I believe it was, in Memphis. Well, I was the least recognizable person in the bunch in Memphis, so they sent me in. I went in, ordered something, made eye contact with the guy. Wait a minute, went to the bathroom. A few minutes, he came in, and there was nobody. It was a small bathroom. Nobody ever does. I said, man, I don't know how glad I am to see you. And he was shocked. He thought, he had been seeing cars all day that he thought was us. Okay? We had no idea. He thought we were all over him. We had no idea where he was. And that was some highly trained people in surveillance with good vehicles. Even though one of them didn't start when it needed to. That's another thing about equipment on surveillance and everything else. It's going to mess it. Count on it messing up. It's going to mess up when you need it worse most of the time. That's the kind of thing that really happens. And to surveil one car for a limited amount of time, we had about 8 vehicles set up, and it still didn't work. Okay? So, yeah, let's just surveil this guy in Florida. Yeah, that's what everybody said. Okay, here we go. Number 1, if you're going to try and surveil him, if you're not going to do it around the clock, if you're not going to do it 24/7, you might as well not do it at all. Because I will guarantee you, well, I can't guarantee it, but I bet you what will happen is the hour you are gone will be when something happens. We had it on another surveillance we were running here in West Tennessee on an airplane at an airport. It once again involved the feds and the state, everybody. We had it covered. One group of feds left the airport, been laying out 24/7 on it for like 3 days now. And one group, the group that was watching the airport, left and went to another airport nearby. It wasn't 15 miles away, to pick up a group that was flying in to pick up the surveillance. When they drove back, the airplane was gone, and it was like a DC-3. It wasn't a Piper Cub. Gone. So that's how things happen. That's how quick they happen. You got to be 24/7. How long are you going to commit to do this? You're going to need, now, I don't know in this situation, maybe you could use drones or helicopters or planes for aerial surveillance, which would help you manpower-wise, but you're going to have some manpower. I wouldn't try to set out on something like this with fewer than 4 or 5 cars dedicated to that surveillance. Now, that's for around the clock. That means they can't leave. They can't do any other police work. And we're going to have some overtime. It's going to cost some money. You say, well, what's money? Well, I won't tell you what money is. If it doesn't go right, money's what you're going to have to justify if you run that surveillance. To the mayor, to the city administrator, to the city council, to the people of that city and county, whoever's paying that money. It's just a real world, folks. Real world. You got to consider those things. if he leaves the house, how far are you going to follow him? He can get in the car and go to California and get on an airplane. What can you do about that? Nothing. Watch him. Let him go. How far are you going to follow him if he leaves? Are you going to follow somebody else? What if mother leaves that house? She might be running an errand for him. She may be carrying a message to somebody, disposing of evidence. You go follow her, and then dad leaves. Now you got to have more manpower, right? Okay. What about if he leaves? Well, let's say from Florida he leaves and heads north. Goes to Atlanta. You got arrangements made up for him to go through Atlanta to have help in that jurisdiction? You better. A lot of traffic in Atlanta. If you've never driven through there, you need to just take a leisurely stroll, take a leisurely drive through Atlanta, Georgia sometime. Terrible traffic. Easy to lose somebody in traffic like that. And what if something bad happens? Let's say somewhere he's got a gun. He stops at a gas station, you pull him behind him, and he's made you. He's figured out who you are, and he starts shooting, and you shoot back. You need some local police with you to get ambulance there, get back up there. You got to make arrangements for those things. How you going to communicate? Cell phone, you better have a good number. Okay. You say, okay, well, I just want to know if he leaves, if he's going to leave the house. If he leaves the house, hey, what are you going to do? Sit in front of the house? It's like a residential neighborhood to me. You just going to sit out there in front of the house. Neighbors they not like that very much. So who cares what they like? Well, here's the problem. As I said earlier, if whoever you're watching figures out you're watching them, unless you're just trying to stress them, you might as well call it off and go to the house. Because they're in charge of the surveillance at that point. They can carry you wherever they want to. One can take you and lead you to the left when your real target goes to the right. They might even say, he's left the house. He went to this park over here to take a walk. That's what happened in this case. That could have been good information. The parents could have been, or they could have been pulling the old direction, misdirection play. You go over here and look left, well, he's going to go right. I don't know. Running surveillance is hard. You're just going to sit out there and watch the house. You don't have any warrants on this guy. Now, there's no good just to watch the front of the house. Somebody's got to watch the back of the house. You might need to watch the sides of the house. He can go out of window. People do strange things sometimes. Now, you don't have any warrants on this guy. You can't say he's broken any laws at this point. He's already got a lawyer. Does everybody listening to me and looking at me know the word harassment? You ever hear of police harassment? Yeah. Get ready for that if you start just sitting outside somebody's house for days at a time watching to see what they're doing. You can't do that. And what are you trying to do? They say, let's get surveillance. And what they're saying on the TV that I'm seeing, they're saying it like, so that he couldn't have just left like that. Well, he could have left. He could have left anytime he wanted to, gone anywhere he wanted to. That's the point I'm making. Now, you might run surveillance on a situation like that to see if he left and led you to some evidence. Cover up some evidence of a crime. Of course, the crime is still in question. And as far as we know, if there is a criminal act, it happened out west, way away from Florida. There's nothing to make you think there's any evidence around Florida where he lived. Maybe he would go and visit a witness. The person that he would go and see would be somebody at some point you might want to go and talk to and see if he told them something. That could be of some value, I consider it. But that's kind of far-fetched. Because in these situations, a lot of things get far-fetched. Anyway, it just kind of got on my skin. One good thing about the police business is if you don't have any idea what you need to do, all you got to do is talk to somebody. Because everybody at some time or another tends to be an expert on police business. Law and Order and CSI are great shows. They're great entertainment. That ain't the way, just because you watch a few episodes of those shows doesn't make you an expert in the police business. It's real life. Folks, one thing we try to do with our shows, with everyone we do, is try to make the understanding relationship between the public and the police a little better. Because the more that we understand one another, the better we'll get along and the more effective we'll be and the safer our society will be. And we hope that we're doing some good. Until next time, my name's Jimmy Leach. Please be safe.